Let's move on to Topher from Albedo. Welcome to the stream. Wow, that is a great background.
The command center.
The command center.
In the command center.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, young company, incorporated in 2020, right? And first satellites in orbit already. And breaking news, you got to update your Wikipedia page because on Albedo Space, it says the company plans to launch its first satellite in 2025. That's old news.
Old news.
Yeah. Hopefully someone updates that. We need to figure out the Wikipedia thing.
Yeah,
we started late 2020 in Y Combinator Winter 21 batch.
Fantastic.
So we got to start.
Wow, hard tech in YC, another narrative violation. But break it down for me. Like, what does the satellite actually do? And like, where is the path? I see on the wiki again, plan to have a fleet of 24 spacecraft. Is that accurate? Are you thinking bigger? And what happens when this constellation goes up?
Yeah, so basically what we do, we build satellites that fly super low in this new orbit called VLEO, very low Earth orbit. And so this first one, they're pretty big. They're like walk-in freezer size. We just launched this first one on Friday as the cake topper on Transporter 13. So like the big satellite up top got dropped off in Leo. It was epic drop-off video of us getting like dropped off right over the Nile. So that was super cool. But the kind of novelty that we're bringing is building these satellites to operate in this very low orbit for an extended period of time. And so then we can capture imagery or other things at a resolution that today you can only get from planes or drones on the commercial side or from the national systems on the government side. And so it kind of is a breakthrough in terms of the data quality at low cost that we can capture from this new orbit where there's a lot of drag and different things that have prevented people from building satellites that fly this low before. But that's what this first satellite will do. And we'll get down there in about 2 months from Leo to VLEO.
So talk about just from when you started the company, there had been plenty of high profile, space oriented companies, but it feels like I just can imagine there was way less just excitement and interest even then when you were starting the company. How have kind of conversations even on the capital side shifted since then? Because I'm sure your inbox these days is full of inbound, but maybe wasn't always the case.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more interest these days from the capital allocation community on the national security technology side. And for us, so where we got the idea was actually in President Trump's first administration. He tweeted this classified satellite image, basically declassified it as the president. People saw it. They were like, whoa, this looks like 10 centimeters per pixel, which is about the size of a coaster that you put your drink on. Must be from $1 billion reconnaissance satellite. Would be amazing to have commercially because it could replace planes and drones for all these industrial applications that go through the pains of flying those platforms today. But it would cost $1 billion even from LEO because you would need a huge telescope. And so that's what initially drove the idea for very low Earth orbit. At that time, there was still, investors were still bullish on Earth observation as a whole. Today, that is not generally the case. It's been a tough market in terms of the capital that has gone in compared to what's come out. For us, tapping into that commercial aircraft and drone market, which is just super fragmented, and the value prop is pretty obvious. If you can match that resolution from space, you have global coverage, it's on demand, you image spots much more frequently, and it's much cheaper. And so the resolution is key there. And then to the question on the national security side, there's this big shift right now to proliferated architectures because of counter space threats from our adversaries that make our big bespoke satellites very vulnerable. And so what has historically prevented that in a lot of ways is the capability trade-off, where if you proliferate and build way more satellites than a few big bespoke ones, maybe the capability isn't as good. In our case, VLEO really unlocks these two things that have previously been mutually exclusive, which is that exquisite capability, but at low cost. So now you can spend that, cost savings on proliferation, which is much more resilient, creates much more coverage. And so, yeah, it's definitely a good time to be launching this first satellite, be first to VLEO with the tailwinds underway on the national security side.
Speaking of national security, when you see espionage and enterprise SaaS, does that keep you up at night? Your guys are obviously in a much more sort of critical industry in many ways. SaaS is important, but also having sort of global visibility.
Neck and neck, really.
Yeah, neck and neck. But yeah, how do you think that? How seriously do you guys have to take security given that you're processing all this very sensitive data?
Definitely seriously. And we not only from like a the data perspective, but a lot of our technology is ITAR controlled. And
Mm-hmm.
so that drives certain security levels. We have a what they call a tier 3 license from the remote sensing regulatory body. That means that we have additional kind of cybersecurity requirements. And so that has driven us to, yeah, think about the cybersecurity and those sorts of things early on because we had to. But yeah, I mean, given what we're doing and the more exposure we have now than we did years ago, it's definitely yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of VLEO? I mean, I'm sure that you get higher resolution with smaller telescope. I remember early on someone was telling me that oh, imagine the Hubble telescope. Just turn it around and point it at Earth, and that's probably what the spy satellites look like. And there's probably some benefits there, but then you're also fighting gravity. So do you have like crazy booster capability? Is that what you're optimizing for? Like just pros and cons of VLEO.
Yeah, so we would say actually the hardest part for our architecture in VLEO is like the kind of robotics, precision pointing control system technology that we need to build
Sure.
because the satellite's moving so fast and we have this big telescope and a tiny angle. And so being able to collect a bunch of different areas, make those images not blurry, that is where really the hardest part is for any big space-based telescope, but especially in VLEO. But then there also is a lot of atmosphere there as well. So we have a bunch of propulsion on board.
Hmm.
Being heavy and having a slick area is pretty helpful for that. And so, like, if you put, I think historically, a lot of people have looked at VLEO with CubeSats, and those just don't last like very long there because you can imagine like a bowling ball versus a feather ripping through the atmosphere. And so we pack a ton of mass in these pretty big satellites with solar arrays covering everything because we keep them body mounted opposed to deploying out like traditional satellites, which hurt some of the power. But then there's a bunch of like atomic oxygen stuff there too, and there's special coatings and things that we do for that, and to protect the optics and the solar array. So there's kind of like a bunch of different categories. The most obvious one is drag. That for us, our average mission life will be about 5 years per satellite. It's actually very dependent on the 11-year solar cycle. And the good thing about the drag, though, is it's a safe place to be. So, like from a space safety perspective, there's concerns in LEO. If satellites break, they're in orbit for 50, 100 years. But in VLEO, it's like a matter of weeks or days, and so it's not it's a sustainable place to be.
Has running this company made you want to travel more or less? I could imagine you just get an image of somewhere sometimes, and you're like, been there. I feel like I've been there. I don't need to go.
I know what it looks like. It's a bunch of water.
But I could also see it. You see this place, and you're like, wow, this looks fantastic.
Yeah, there's no one else around. I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta get over there.
Barren island I found.
Not that you have time to travel, but someday maybe.
Yeah, I have definitely gotten better at my geography skills running this company for 4 years. But I mean, we will start getting our first pictures in a couple months when we get to VLEO. So that's really when we'll have been there, done that in terms of all the spots that we image and maybe travel less.
How do you think about the market size and the trade-off between commercial and government contracts? I don't know how much you can talk about the government size, but there's like famous examples of satellite imagery being used to see how many cars are in the Walmart parking lot, and some hedge fund saying, "Oh, well, Walmart's going to miss on earnings because they didn't have enough cars in the parking lot buying stuff," and it's a proxy metric. Obviously, hedge funds have a lot of cash; they can pay for a lot of data. It's maybe less cool than, "Hey, we're helping keep America safe," but obviously, it's a real market. Like you're running a business, you got to sell to whoever you can. How are you thinking about it in the early stage for customers?
So this first satellite will operate solo for the first 2 years. Then we'll start deploying more in 2027. Mm-hmm. And we have this reserve program because there's a finite amount of imagery capacity that we have. And we've signed 22 customers on that. And wow. the by far majority are commercial. Sure. And it's a breadth of different industries. Like we have mining, power lines, agriculture, mapping, natural gas pipelines, like a lot of these different kind of industrial use cases. And so we see a huge opportunity there, not because there's any precedent for it, because like I was saying, the Earth observation market has not done as well as it was hoped. But from that aircraft and drone perspective and those proof points of those contracts, we have kind of strategically tried to cover a lot of those different applications so that for the first 2 years, we can demonstrate the value across those. And we've like completely sold out of our capacity over the United States as well as a few other regions. Our allies as well are very interested in this level of exquisite data. And so that will be a big customer base for us. And then from the kind of split with the national security side, we have this, not only this Clarity satellite that we have, but we've built the bus that we call Precision in-house for the VLEO environment, and it can host these very large payloads. And so from a platform perspective and these kind of proliferated but exquisite mission sets, that's where some of the opportunity with the U.S. government will be, along with delivering data from our satellites. But we also, see the need for these dedicated platforms and what VLEO can bring to the table, not only for just pictures, but a lot of other things.
Do you think the dynamics of space have made you and the team better operators? There's so much around, just sort of these long-term planning horizons. Like startups traditionally are like, we're just trying to do this as fast as possible. We're going to ship, we're going to iterate, but like that just doesn't, you got to move fast, but then you can't just, you don't want to be breaking things. It's expensive to get stuff up, and then it sets you back years, and that can kill the company, right? So has that, how's that impacted how you build?
Have absolutely learned a ton as a first-time founder the last 4 years, and it's been an amazing journey. I think the main way we've approached that is just by hiring more experienced engineers than the average startup would. And so that people know, even whether they come from a new space or kind of a tech world, or like a OG aerospace prime world, they know exactly what needs to be done from day one. And so we've been able to move a lot faster via that, while still with this level of, these aren't CubeSats. These are like very complex space robots, basically, with precision optics and crazy control systems. And so we don't have the 1,000 satellite production line where we're doing the on-orbit testing constantly, but we've spent more time testing on the ground and just kind of understanding, the trade space from an architecture perspective. And I think that's helped us move faster, even though it is a complex capability, and especially the learnings we'll take from this first one. And I mean, the commissioning that we're doing right now, we're I think 2 weeks ahead of our internal schedule, because you wouldn't expect to put up a space robot and it just it's not buggy and stuff. You have to fix stuff. And our engineers in here on the first day were like, is this actually the real data, or is this simulated data? Because it's just kind of working. And I think a lot of that is just smart design, really good planning. And that's all kind of a result of the engineering team and the bias towards, the seasoned, experienced folks on that side.
That's fantastic.
Great answer.
Well, we'll let you get out of here soon. Last question. How was DC?
DC was great. I heard you were out there as well, right?
Very briefly.
The podcast, it's very important work. It was great. We did Manifest Demo Day, which was awesome. It was this event to kind of present to different military and intelligence potential customers and users. And we had the big mock-up on stage of the satellite so you could see it to scale. We had just done a pass where we had sent some dark pixels through the payload sensor. And it was a great turnout. All the demos were honestly awesome. Like the guys that put on the event, everybody brought out. It was pretty incredible to see all the tech.
Yeah, Mike's a killer. He's awesome event. Anyway, thanks so much for stopping by. This is fantastic.
Great to meet you.
Thanks,
we'll have you back
Appreciate
soon.
Cheers.